Denver 7 News at 4. It survived the Marshall Fire. Now this symbol of strength is back on display in Louisville.
As inflation continues, inventory at pawn shops is growing. The types of items you can find now and what to be looking for to make sure you're getting a deal. And free summer meals for kids are getting a makeover. The program connecting kids in need directly to restaurants that's looking to expand.
And an Aurora home now looks like Swiss cheese after an hours-long standoff comes to a deadly end. We've got new information about why police were tracking the man who was hiding inside.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Porter. Well, we're starting today with some scary video from on board an RTD bus. It shows a rider stabbing another passenger, and we want to warn you, this video is graphic. That incident happened last month on a bus on Colfax Avenue. The suspect in orange is seen talking on the phone. He then pulls out a knife and leaves the screen. A few seconds later, the victim comes into frame and the suspect continues to stab him before another rider on the bus intervenes. The victim is 22 and has autism. He suffered several stab wounds, but he did survive. The RTD Employees Union we spoke with says violent incidents are becoming more and more frequent.
But now we have operators that are more or less involved in situations. Some of them don't even report it, because the mindset is, well, that just happens. And that's so tragic to me. I don't ever want to come to work feeling that it's acceptable or that's part of the job.
Police have still not made any arrests. Crime Stoppers is asking the public for information and offering a $2,000 reward. You can call 720-913-STOP. Well, there is now a large hole in the front of an Aurora home where police used an armored vehicle while trying to capture a man wanted for murder inside. The home is on Oswego, not far from Del Mar Park, and that's where police tracked 27-year-old Fabian Perry, who was wanted in Roswell, Georgia, for shooting the mother of his children with a high-powered rifle. Police say Perry fired 20 to 40 rounds during the nearly 14-hour standoff. The standoff ended about 2 this morning when investigators say Perry came out of the home holding a rifle and was shot by both an Aurora police officer and an Arapahoe County deputy. The flag that flew over the Louisville post office during the Marshall Fire is now on display. The mayors of Louisville and Superior were on hand for the unveiling at the post office, along with postal officials. The flag had to undergo extensive renovation, but many see its survival as a symbol of the area's recovery. And while that's a sign of recovery, many people in Louisville are afraid they won't be able to rebuild if a tax being considered by the city council passes tonight. Residents rallied against the tax outside City Hall this weekend, asking the city to waive the tax. The use tax rate for new buildings is 3.6%, which would be about $25,000 for building a new home. Fire victims say they want the city to help because they're already dealing with so many unexpected financial burdens.
I think the whole community is standing up and saying, well, of course, this is what we need. It can be done. It just takes the will and it takes the work.
And many argue the city can waive that tax because Superior did the same thing months ago. Louisville's city leaders will talk about that tax tonight. Their meeting starts at 6. And as you can imagine, talking about taxes, rebuilding, or even that flag can be steps forward, but also triggering and frustrating for fire victims. 6 months in, and hundreds of families are still struggling financially and emotionally. Denver 7's Christian Lopez reports on the ways Louisville is trying to offer some comfort, both now and once we hit the emotional 1-year mark.
Nearly 7 months after the Marshall Fire impacted this community, you can see the progress that's been made here in Louisville so far. And looking ahead to that 1-year mark, the city is already planning for that event. They're calling it One Community, 1 Year. Among the tentative plans for marking the anniversary are guided contemplation and art projects at the Louisville Library, an exhibit at the city's museum showing the year of recovery. They're also partnering with artists and musicians to help the community look forward. I spoke to an art therapist who has been helping Marshall Fire victims through the healing process over the past few months. She says hitting that 6-month mark recently was triggering for a lot of people who are still dealing with a lot. Her biggest advice to those who are struggling and going through the rebuilding process is to not compare yourself to others if you're not as far along as your neighbors, and just take it one step at a time. She thinks the best thing for the city to do on that first anniversary is just offer a space where the community can come together and feel supported.
I do think that there needs to be something to really honor the people who lost so much, and everybody, because it's just such a huge community experience. And to really let people know that they still want them to be in their community if they've been displaced. Like, I think a lot of people feel pushed out, at this point. There's a lot of hang-ups with building permits.
That therapist you just heard from is part of the Marshall Fire Art Therapy Group from Superior, and they offer a space for the community to come together and work on art projects. They also have counseling available. It's all free, and that program runs through December. If you want those details, you can go to superiorchamber.com. Reporting in Louisville this morning, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
As the White House works to free WNBA star Brittany Griner from a Russian prison, President Biden is moving forward with an executive order aiming to prevent some situations like this. The measure will expand the available tools to deter hostage-taking and wrongful detention of U.S. nationals. That will include visa bans on those involved in hostage-taking. The State Department will also introduce the letter D on travel advisories to show the risk of a detention in a country. Russian leader Vladimir Putin is meeting with the leaders of Turkey and Iran today. The main topic will likely be the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Turkey is considered a main mediator between Russia and Ukraine. The countries are working together to restart Ukrainian grain exports. In March, Turkey hosted 2 rounds of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Those negotiations ultimately went nowhere. Today's talks are not expected to move the needle on a peace agreement either. The fallout from the war impacts every corner of the globe. The U.S. and Europe blocked most oil and natural gas imports from Russia after the invasion began. That caused the price of gas and heating oil to rise. Food prices are up too, since Ukraine is a leading producer of the world's grain.
The inflation will come down when the war ends, and I don't think we need more reasons that the United States should try to pursue a negotiated solution.
Experts say as these issues pile up in the U.S., they become a distraction from the war effort. The daily news about bombings and drone strikes can also become overwhelming. Many people just tune out as a result of Ukraine fatigue.
There are a million things going on right now that in many cases are more pressing to an American audience than the situation in Ukraine. But I do think it's really important to maintain that level of interest and to maintain that level of support.
Unfortunately, there is no end in sight, at least not in the short term. Russia's leaders want control of land that belongs to Ukraine, while Ukraine's leaders don't want to give up that control. Each side has popular support in its home country, so there is no incentive to head to the bargaining table.
I think it could be months until we get something of a negotiated settlement. The Ukrainians are in it as a matter of life and death. They're not going to stop fighting.
Free school meals have been available to all families for the past 2 years, but that could be ending. The push to keep this change in place for the coming school year.
And rising prices are impacting some families' travel plans. Up next, how those changes are impacting occupancy rates at Colorado's mountain destinations.